Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Professor Ned.
And today we are reviewing Mythic Mischief Volume 2, something hijinks. Hedge hijinks? High stakes hijinks.
High stakes hijinks.
I always want to say hedgehog
High
hijinks.
hedge hijinks.
Hedgehog hijinks, high stakes
Yep.
thing. That's the one.
Let's just get it out of the way now. There are gargoyles in this game, and growing up, I used to always say Gorguile. G-O-R-E, as in gory, guile. And, I might mess that up.
There are no Egyptians in this game, but growing up I used to say Cleopatra instead of Cleopatra. Just because.
Cleopatra.
Anyways, this is going to be a review of Mythic Mischief Volume 2, High Stakes Hijinks. This is a prototype. Everything you see here, rules, components, all that stuff, subject to change. Although I will say, it doesn't really feel like a prototype. It feels like this could be final production.
There was some balancing stuff that was being discussed, so I think it may be a couple of the numbers on the abilities changing more than anything aesthetic, in my opinion.
Yeah. Now this is Volume 2 of Mythic Mischief. It already was Mythic Mischief. I've already reviewed that on the channel. I gave it a 5 out of 5, a rating that for me still holds up on this game. I love this game. I adore this game. I will talk about my opinion on whether you shouldn't get this game, who is it for, do I like the factions. I'll talk about all that stuff towards the end of this video, but for most of the video I'm just going to have Meg talk about her opinion of Mythic Mischief, because I've talked about my opinion of Mythic Mischief, and should we talk about how it plays?
Sure.
Should I do that part?
Sure, and just to preface, the base game has 4 characters, and then 3 expansions, which are 1 character each, or 1 team faction each. So there's 7, there are 4 in this, and as far as we know, there are no plans for expansion characters in this
Kickstarter
campaign.
As far as we know.
Yeah.
The base game factions are, you know this better than I do. There's the Frankenstein's monsters. There's
zombies, the witches, and the wizards.
Vampires. Not witches.
Wizards.
The wizards and vampires.
Yep.
Then the expansion factions are the trolls, the witches, and the ghosts.
The ghosts.
And then today over here we have the gnomes, the gargoyles, the fairies, and the werewolves over here. So werewolves, fairies, gargoyles, and gnomes are the 4 factions here. I will talk about my opinion on, for sure, the new 4 ones, as well as relatively how they compare to the rest. I don't actually remember all of them as well. I've played, well, we'll talk about it. But let's go ahead and talk about what the game does. I'll do a very short, quick overview because I have covered this. There are no rules changes between this and the original, so if you want more of an overview, you can check out my original review, and if you want a full how to play, there are plenty of content creators out there on the YouTubes who will show you a full, proper how to play. So this is just going to be your 30 seconds to 60 seconds how to play.
Well, not to cut you off, because you were just about to do it, but everyone has heard your content. I mean, I say that assuming you've all watched.
Every single person on planet Earth
content on all of Mythic
has watched
Mischief.
all of my videos.
I haven't. I cannot remember what you said about how you explained it. So do you want me to explain it and see if it's similar or if it's completely different?
The floor is yours.
So Mythic Mischief is generally at its heart a head-to-head battle, 1v1. There are other modes and things like that, but generally you're going to be looking at 1 versus 1, where each player is going to have a faction, and your faction has 3 miniatures. So all of your miniatures behave the same. They have certain rules on how they do different types of abilities, and everyone's abilities are pretty similar, but also different, and it's kind of like a general vibe of you have an idea of what they might be able to do, but not exactly. So then you are all on a board, which is a what, 5x5?
It's a 5x5 grid. 5x5. Yeah.
You're all playing on 5x5 grid, which is very similar to something like chess, and then there are different things that are blocking your pathways, like these hedges, which is different from the base game, which is bookshelves. Usually you're in a library, this time you're in a hedge maze. So you have these hedges. You have these things called clutter, which in the base game it's books and stuff, and in this one it's bramble and branches. You usually have a tome keeper, and this guy is instead our hedge master.
Groundskeeper, I believe, but I like calling him our hedgehog.
We keep saying different things. So he's the one that's moving around the board. And then there are these different objectives on the board. So there's a 1, a 2, and a 3. Now every turn, it's going to go back and forth, and you will be moving your miniatures, using their abilities to manipulate other miniatures. And then at the end, this guy is always going to move either 3 or 4, depending on the round. And he will go 1, 2, 3. And if he walks over a mischief, a mythic. A mischief. If he walks over a mythic, that one would then be taken off the board, respawn the next round on the next player's turn, but that's basically how you catch them, and that's how you would go up on points.
The way you win the game is either the first person to 10 points, means 10 captures, or alternatively, at the end of 2 full rounds, because you have before lunch and after lunch. Before lunch, you're going to go 1, 2, 3. After lunch, you're going to flip this card, reveal it, reset tomes on the board, reset the 1, 2, 3, and then have them go that route. And again, either to 10 points, or alternatively to either 10 points or to 2 full rounds, and see who has many points at the end of those full rounds. You're going to be trying to gather these tomes to slot into your abilities, because when you do have a tome, you take it and you pop it into your ability, which means you'll have a stronger chance of having higher abilities or more abilities in the game as you go through it. Generally, the abilities you have is every faction has a move ability, a way to manipulate other mythics in the game, a way to move walls, and then a distracting the Tomekeeper, which is pulling the Tomekeeper towards you in one way, shape, or form. And they have an additional special ability that involves spending tomes to do, as well as an after lunch ability that's only active in the second half of the game. But effectively, 2 versus 2, well, not 2 versus 2, 1 versus 1, effectively a 1 versus 1 abstract strategy game with asymmetric factions at its core. That's basically Mythic Mischief.
And I may have zoned out a little bit when you said this part.
Just like everyone else, it's all good.
Did you go through their actions?
Yes.
Because the thing that's cool is that all of their actions are, there's moving, how you move others, how you move terrain, and then how you move the Tomekeeper. So it is the same for everyone, and then what you do is what's different.
Yes. With that, it's time for your opinions.
Of the game in general, or of the new expansion?
So I guess that's a good question. Why don't you save for the game in general, and then we'll talk about the nuances between the original and 2, because I have opinions on that.
So I personally very much enjoy this game. So take that with a grain of salt. I really love it. So that may skew me more towards favorable for this. I really, really enjoy Mythic Mischief. It's very thinky. At first, when I first learned it, I was overwhelmed by the different factions and the different things that you could do. And because the puzzle of the game is not only how you capture people, but then you don't leave yourself vulnerable to be captured the next turn. And it's very important to balance both of those things, because if you just keep staying toe-to-toe, then whoever went first will win, and that's just how it is. But for me, I do think there is a barrier to entry where some people will see games like this where you are just strategically moving around a board and it's a bit too abstract. And so I do think it's not for everyone. I think this is a game that could frustrate plenty of players, depending on what you enjoy in a board game and what you want to be doing. And then my only other thing, which I agree there are ways to fix it. They do have other modes in the game. I would always prefer it at 2-player, but that being said, you're limited to a 2-player game and a 2-player experience. I did play the Blitz mode. I still would always want this particular experience, but that does limit it to that.
Yeah, I agree very strongly. For me, again, condensed notes of Mythic Mischief in general, I love the game. I've always been a fan of it since the first time I played it. I think it's a fantastic game with layered abilities, lots of back and forth. There's always that tactical aspect of how do you see a pattern. One of the things that they're actually doing now is this concept called 3 catch challenges, which are kind of giving you a very specific puzzle setup and saying you can actually catch all 3 of your opponent's mythics right now. How do you do so? And you have to find that, and it's not easy, but the fact that it's not easy is kind of where you see the layers of this game. There's a lot going on here, but you have to see the pattern in how the game operates. The biggest thing against it is, like you said already, is the fact that it does thrive as a 2-player game. The other modes are kind of extra, but they're not going to be the way the game is mostly played. And then downtime. At the end of the day, this game is not downtime per se, but AP, analysis paralysis. Mm-hmm. This is a game that can absolutely have most players struggling to try to find that perfect pattern and spending too long on their turn. And so 2 people who know the game well can knock out a game in 25-30 minutes easily. But if you're taking your time, or if you don't know the game well, this game can draw out to 45 minutes to an hour as people just take way too long trying to find their moves. And with that,
yeah, a way to simplify it would be if you're thinking about something like chess, it's that one team is all bishops, one team is all knights. And if the knights don't move on to the color the bishops are on, they can't capture them. So then you have to try to figure out how to get them there.
And with that, as far as 1 versus 2. So 1 versus 2, before we do, by the way, I should make a disclaimer that, I should have said this at the beginning of the video, I apologize, but it is worth noting that Ivy Games did fly us down, or not fly us down, we drove down to Ivy Games to what's it called? Actually, no, fly down. Right? Yeah, fly down. Yeah, Ivy Games did fly us down to, what's it called, to go through to Nashville to show the game and all that stuff. So there was a paid content creator trip, effectively, well, not paid, reimbursed, cost covered, content creator trip for this game, both for Mythic Mischief 1 and Mythic Mischief 2 over here. Please take that into account. What I will always say is they've done it with other games in the past. I've clearly had a very strong preference for Mythic Mischief over anything else, so take into account all biases. But yes, with that though, Mythic Mischief 1 versus 2. So, for me, the main thing, and I'm curious what your thoughts are, but for me, the first thing I'll say is that Mythic Mischief 2 is basically 1, as far as I can see. It's just more of the same, with a different theme and with 4 new factions. As far as the new theme, I like it.
Similar to something like additional dice thrown, or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that. New abilities,
Exactly.
new things that are innovative, but not necessarily changing the rules of the game.
Yeah, 100%. It's just more stuff, more content for a game you either like or don't like. If you don't like Mythic Mischief, I do not think you should get Mythic Mischief High Stakes Hijinks. I can't imagine why I would change your mind. Just replay the originals. It's the same core
But that being
concept.
said, nothing is linear, so you could start with Volume 2, and then decide to go purchase Volume 1 later and integrate that. And I do think something that's very exciting that I really enjoyed is that we played a lot of these 4 factions together, and recently you and I were able to play with Volume 1 factions with Volume 2 factions.
Yeah.
And the Fairies, which is one that we think is very strong, I actually beat the Fairies with the Ghosts.
Yeah.
So that was very...
It the Ghosts? No, the Frankenstein's monsters.
It was the Frankensteins, you're right, because they were throwing the little pixies. Yes. But it was very exciting for me to see a Volume 1... Sorry. Yeah, a Volume 1 faction be what we think is a strong Volume 2 faction, because what I always worry, and especially something with card games and Pokemon, is that usually they'll upgrade abilities to the point that other things aren't playable or can't, like, stand the test of time. And I think that that's something, like, to even say for their design, that they're all very integratable.
Yeah, I think it's true as well. You also played Ghosts versus Werewolves, and one is the Ghosts. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely not a degree of power creep, or at least not noticeable power creep. Maybe it's an Alex issue. But yeah, as far as the theme over here, I do like the visual difference of being in a garden versus being in a school. I don't think it's a major difference. I do like the hedges. I do like all that. So it's nice. I think it's a nice tweak, but nothing crazy. For me, what I find personally interesting is my favorite faction in all of Mythic Mischief and my least favorite faction in all of Mythic Mischief are in high stakes hijinks. That's what I just find interesting.
What's your favorite?
My favorite are the Gnomes.
The Gnomes.
I love the Gnomes. The way the Gnomes operate, they pop up underground, they go under things. The way the Gnomes operate, I think that they're so much fun, and
I pop up underground. I picture like little Alex heads going like, hello.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They disappear. Hello. They have a whole new movement mechanic. They have a little board spot over here that's different. This little puzzle. No one else has 2 movement abilities. They have 2 movement abilities. I find them so much fun to use. So my Gnomes are my favorite faction. My least favorite is the Gargoyles. I have not gotten a good handle on how the Gargoyles operate or manipulate or move yet, and I just find them, like, I can do stuff with them, but I find them struggling the hardest to feel like I got stuff done. And so that's a small little... And the Fairies and the Werewolves fall in line with the rest of the factions for me, which is, for me, most of the factions are factions that I enjoy, but don't have incredible highs or incredible lows. I think the Witches are generally my favorite, and the Vampires might be my least favorite from the base game, but that range is smaller. For me, the Gnomes are like a notch above everyone else, the Gargoyles are a notch below everyone else, which I just find interesting.
Yeah, I thought the Werewolves were great. They were probably my favorite from this version. Yeah. And then the Gnomes were probably my second favorite. The Gargoyles, I still have not played as, which we've been playing a lot of Mythic Mischief. I think it may be time for me to try them.
Oh, you should try the Gargoyles. Let's see how you feel with Mythic Mischief then. But yeah, I mean, any thoughts on 1 versus 2 for you? Any differences, clarity, anything else?
No, just that I'm very happy, just to clarify the 2 points, that I'm very happy that it's very integratable, and you also don't have to buy them in order. You could even buy Volume 2 and then decide to get the expansion people, and you can get them one at a time. So just know that when you're setting yourself up for this, you don't have to get everything at once, and you don't have to go in order.
Yeah, speaking of not having to get everything, unless you are someone who's playing through all your Mythic Mischief content, just understand this is just more of the same. If you're, going back to the Dice Throwing example, if you're someone who doesn't feel the need to get all the Dice Throwing characters because you don't play with it enough, that same thing is going to apply here. I think Mythic Mischief is fantastic. I love the game. I want all the factions. But if you're tabling it once or twice a year and you already have 7 factions, I just don't think you need to get more. Are they fun? Yes. Are they like, oh my gosh, you absolutely need this because the Gnomes are the best ever, it's going to change your whole opinion of the game? Not on this lightest. So I do like it, I do encourage it, not encourage it, I do like it, I do recommend it, but with the grain of salt of understand whether you need it or not.
And I do think that their abilities, like we were saying, are all similar enough where they, it's how you move your opponent, how you move terrain, things like that, that I would personally choose by what things you like. If you really like Gnomes or things like that, I would back it based aesthetically, because the mechanics of the game are strong enough and spread out enough and adaptable enough that really what the miniatures are is what's going to matter for you, is what you're looking at when you're playing them. I played as the Werewolves often, and every time they killed me, I would go and make a dog sound, and it made everyone feel very, very guilty. So I say, if you really like Fairies, these ones are absolutely beautiful. These sculpts, they're so great. So yeah, I would say check out the factions and see who you like.
Yeah, and that's, I think, where we are for me. For me, Mythic Mischief, I mentioned at the beginning of this review, it's a 5 out of 5 for me. High Stakes Hijinks has done nothing to change my mind on that rating. It's more of the same. The biggest critique I can give of this is it doesn't do anything new. So if you're looking for something new, that's not what this does. It's more of the same, but for me, at least, that's in a good way.
Yeah, and I would say I don't know if we completely know how they're planning on selling the 3 catch puzzles.
That's fair.
I know that they're planning to put it in maybe a book or something like that, that may be part of the campaign.
That is a good point. If there are,
and that is a major change for me, is that for me this is primarily a 2-player game. However, those 3 catch puzzles I would do by myself all the time. So something like that does make a big difference for me, that if you're a solo gamer, depending on what they're doing with these 3 catch puzzles, they were very satisfying, that I would check those out if you were very interested in the game, but not sure if this solo will keep up for you.
Yeah, the truth is, it's a good point. They also have another thing planned, which I don't know if it's public or not, so I'm not saying it yet. But there's another thing that they're doing as well.
Peeled.
So in terms of new stuff outside of this box, they do, or possibly, again, good point. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how the 3 catch puzzles are being done, but I do recommend highly, especially because I've played Mythic Mischief solo. I don't believe you have.
No.
So yeah, I played Mythic Mischief solo, and while I do think it's a great game for solo gamers, for me, it falls in the category of, that was a good solo game, I'd rather play head-to-head against somebody else.
Yeah.
The 3 catch puzzles, on the other hand, I want a book of 100 of those. I want to just, like, once every few days, pull up in a new puzzle, set it up, and just try to puzzle my way through it. I think it's a lot you can do. Yeah.
Yep.
In any case, that is our review of Mythic Mischief High Stakes Hijinks from Ivy Games, Volume 2. I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Professor Meg.
And have a good one.
Bye.